Well, hello and welcome to Key Concepts, Conversations for Piano Teachers. My name is Ben Fonville. I'm the Piano Department Coordinator here at Amro Music. And this is part 4, I believe now, of an ongoing series we've been doing for piano teachers to discuss elevating our online teaching experience for ourselves and for our students in this COVID-19 pandemic. I know that many of you are teaching face-to-face again, and then many folks are also still teaching online, and we're still fielding lots of questions about improving that experience. So we've had some exciting topics so far. Just so that you know, if you have missed a session or want to go back and replay, you can go to our website, amromusic.com, and click on the events, and you'll see the Key Concepts series there. We've archived each of the previous sessions and any of the resources that go along with them. And I think this is one that may be good to refer back to as well. A quick note, it might be helpful as we get started to find a pair of earphones, headphones, earbuds, something that at a few points during today's session we'll be demonstrating a few audio differences of what the improvements can actually make, and you can really get a true sense of the significance of these changes when you listen through a good set of headphones versus a smartphone speaker or laptop speakers, particularly if you've got some other noise going on in the background. So looking forward to diving in. So we're going to get started. I'm going to share my screen, and just I guess a couple other housekeeping things. If you have any questions as we go along, feel free to use the Q&A to put that in there, and we'll try to field those as we go along or at the very end. So I'm going to share my screen and let's get started. So here we are, overcoming audio and visual challenges. Now today's session is going to get a little bit more technical than we've gotten as far as the nuts and bolts of how are we doing what we do, the connections and things like that. So if you need to refer back to this, that's one of the benefits of the recording. So let's dive in. We're going to cover a few topics today. We're going to take a look at questions to ask as you select a video calling platform. We're going to take a look at some of the free and low-cost improvements that you can make right now to immediately improve the experience and the quality of the sound that your students are receiving. We're going to take a look at investing in some better equipment, some of the pieces, some of the terminology, things that you'll see as you do your research. And then finally, we'll end with just some recommendations for simple equipment that you can recommend to your students. Everything we're going to talk about today is going to happen on your side of the video call. That means every improvement you make is going to help your students see and hear you better. That's one of the challenges with this that we've heard from many teachers, is that you're limited with your students as far as being able to see or hear them clearly. And so hopefully, if you take nothing away today but some of the free enhancements that we're going to take away, some of the things that you can recommend that your students do, some of the improvements you're going to make when you leave this session, you should teach your students to do that don't cost anything. And then we'll look at a piece of equipment or two that can recommend they may consider purchasing or investing in so that you can see and hear them better. Don't feel like you need to rush out and spend a lot of money or buy a lot of equipment that you don't understand, if I can also leave you with that. It's very easy to start investing in gear and not really know, well, how is this actually helping me? And something I have learned over the last 6 and 7 months of this pandemic is that just because I have a piece of equipment doesn't mean it's going to give me good results. It's all about knowing how to use it and what variables it's designed to function well within. Sometimes we can go out and buy a piece of fancy equipment, and if we don't do some basic things first, the results we're going to get aren't going to be much better than what we already had, and we'll just have spent some money. So definitely would encourage you to understand every piece of equipment. If you're going to buy a piece of equipment, buy it so that you're solving one specific problem, maybe more, but chances are probably one problem with each piece of equipment, and build it up as you go. Test it, get some feedback on the changes, and improve, and make sure you're maximizing the use of the tools that you have and that you invest in before you just go out and buy all the pieces at once. So a couple other disclaimers. We do sell some of the equipment that you are seeing and talking about here in this webinar, but not all of it. We are not really a PA or an internet technology company. We're a music store devoted to just trying to help teachers. So all of the recommendations we're having here have just been after trial and error and some of the best practices we've seen across the industry. There's many companies that make recording equipment. And I would encourage you, as I've said, do the research and decide what works best for you. Just because we may recommend one brand does not mean it's the only thing out there. In fact, there are many pieces of equipment out there that may give you the same and probably even the chance of better results if you know how to use it. This is just the equipment that we prefer here, and also the name brand equipment that we know there's good support just universally for, and access to lots of resources to help you as you go along. The other thing to remember is that your own personal equipment, whether that's a phone or a tablet, an iPad, a laptop, whether it's a PC or a Mac or a desktop, and anything else you're using, your piano, if you have an acoustic piano or you're teaching with a digital, all of that may affect what you end up doing in your final studio setup if you make some changes from here. So I would encourage you, always read the specs and understand what you're looking at and what it's going to do for you before you make a purchase. Because your mileage may vary. Our goal wasn't really to sell anything through this webinar. Our goal is simply to give you an understanding and some starting places for some tools and tips. So no animals were harmed in the making of this presentation, and let's keep moving. So one of the immediate decisions to look at and starting places is just to talk about what type of equipment are we using. Are you using a phone or a tablet, an iPad, or are you using a computer? And there are some pros and cons, truthfully, of both. And even within that, the age of the device, what it's capable of, can mean that a newer version of an iPad may work better than an older laptop, or a newer laptop may work better than the most expensive iPad, and also depending on the complexity of what you're looking for. With all of that said, I will say that generally mobile devices, cell phones, smartphones, tablets, iPads, tend to be a little bit more limiting with the ease at improving the experience as far as when you want to go to connect other pieces of equipment to them. That doesn't mean you can't do it. In fact, you can get very good results, but it just generally is not quite so simple. There are fewer options out there on the market, particularly when it comes to some of the more advanced setups that we may land at. You can get good results. You have to kind of understand the environments that those types of devices are designed and engineered to work well in. If you have good natural flat lighting, lots of light like you see right now, not a lot of background noise, you can get pretty good results with those devices. Now, a computer gives you generally the most control. That may not come with the best built-in hardware. However, it's much easier to connect cameras and microphones to improve what your students can see and the quality of them being able to hear you playing and demonstrating techniques. I tend to sound a little bit more old school than some of the younger teachers even that I speak to. But still myself, I prefer a laptop for the ease and the flexibility that it gives me. The other benefit, and this may be more important if you don't have a good Wi-Fi signal in your home, if your router's farther away from where you're teaching, if you have the ability to have a hardwired internet connection, that is absolutely desirable for video conferencing, whether you're talking or playing the piano. A dedicated hardwired connection can be a huge step up and improvement. So I would encourage you to look and see if that's an option, if it's needed. There's lots of tools online to test your internet connection and make sure that it's good and that it's fast and it's stable, because lots of equipment and lots of expensive gear will not compensate for a internet connection that is intermittent, that drops, and that has been a source of frustration we know for many folks. So we're going to take a look at many different platforms. You've got Skype and Zoom and Google Duo, FaceTime. There's probably many more out there. And so one of the other questions after you decide what you're going to use the device is which program to use. We're only going to dive into one of them today, and I'm going to take a stand that this is probably the platform that has the best potential for teaching lessons? And I know that's a hot button topic, but I'm going to defend that answer. And so which one is my favorite? And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to answer that question in a minute. Some questions to ask, as I said: what device are you using? And look at the option that gives you the most control over the experience. You have to remember, you have a goal with video conferencing and online lessons. The people who wrote the program you're using, the programmer's goals, they have a goal. For the most part, they're geared at spoken word. So the piano is an interesting thing. When you hold down the pedal and play a lot of notes, you have a sustaining sound. The human voice tends to be more percussive and rhythmic. And so the sound algorithms have been some of the most frustrating feedback we've heard from teachers as far as sound cutting in and out. Let's take a look at a quick graph here. Now this is on the top. Let's imagine that this is the sound form of the spoken word right now. Now what Zoom or FaceTime or Duo and all of these other platforms, Skype, are doing is they're trying to listen and use a computer algorithm, basically an equation, to figure out what is the sound of the person who's speaking and what is background noise. And if it's background noise, that's going to take that out of the sound that gets sent across the platform. So take a look at the difference of the blue and the red. The red is, the decision of that's the voice, that's the spoken part. And most of these companies have gotten really good at gearing their software to identify correctly the human voice, whether it's male, female, young, old, anything in between, and to really give a pretty clear version of the human voice. What they have not figured out is, because they're not pianists and they're not trying to capture the full range of frequency. The human voice does not have the range of frequency that the piano does, and it does not have the sustaining characteristics that a piano does. So all of that noise and echo cancellation actually is damaging piano sound. That's the number one reason why, when you're demonstrating or your student is playing and you're losing sound, probably all of those improvements. So our preference is Zoom. Now why? I've spent a lot of time looking at different platforms and looking at all the different options on every device. Android, iOS, that's tablets, phones by Apple, and PC and Mac computers. Zoom gives you the ability to bypass all of those enhancements, and I have not found another program that does. So if I'm wrong, please let me know and show me how to do it. But Zoom gives you the ability to disable all of those enhancements and turn on what they call the original sound. That's what we want. We want to be able to turn on the original sound just as we hear it, hopefully is getting captured and sent through the system so that your student can get the same type of sound that you are. And we're going to come to what they'll need to do on their end. I will say, if you can, try to avoid using the built-in microphone on your phone or laptop when you're using these. We'll talk about some solutions to that, because they just generally don't sound that good. And if you're going to focus on anything as far as improving your online lessons experience, I would encourage you and your students to focus on improving the sound, because if we can't hear what's happening, it's difficult to give good feedback. It's difficult for students to have good takeaways. Now, if you're using a laptop, remember I said try to use a microphone. In fact, I'm using one of these right now, just a cheap, what's called a lavalier microphone. It's just a lavalier is a microphone that's designed to be worn close to the body. This is less than $25 on Amazon, and it gives us a much more present voice. Now, everybody's ears are different, but in a few moments we'll demonstrate the difference between this and the built-in microphone. And I think you'll be very clear the difference in the quality of the sound. When we listen through the laptop, we're going to hear a little bit more distant, thin sound. So let's demonstrate that, and let's see. So right now you've been hearing my voice through this microphone that's attached to my tie. A lavalier microphone like this can be attached to any piece of clothing that you have. Very simple to connect. You don't have to get fancy with it. So you can kind of hear. In fact, if you have headphones, this would be a good time to put them on and listen to the sound quality. Again, to my ears, when I put on a lavalier microphone, the sound is much more present. There's a much more clear tone. It's much warmer, and I don't have a good radio voice, I'll acknowledge that, but it's a much more natural sound to me than the microphone from the distance. Another benefit of this is it also cuts down on the room noise. Now I'm going to switch over to the built-in laptop microphone. Now, I can do this with Zoom, which is actually really nice because I have the control over which microphone is sending sound. Let's switch over to the built-in. All right, so now I have switched microphones, and this is the quality of my sound through the built-in microphone. I'm about 24 inches from the screen, which is where the microphone is on my laptop, so I'm not very far away. And when I listened to this earlier, it made me sound much more distant, and I heard a lot more echo and sound of the room. If I clap, I can hear it echo in the room, and I think it may come through the recording. Let's switch back to the lav mic here. Immediately, even just on the microphone button, I can see that the sound is much louder and fuller. And I think that's probably a pretty good comparison over what even just a very cheap microphone can do and the difference that it can make. So we're not talking about what microphone to buy. We're just talking about the difference that switching to something with a little bit more clarity and close to your body, what that can do. So let's go. How are we doing? The other thing that I have done, and I mentioned this, is we want to disable all of that tonal enhancements, the sound enhancements that Zoom does. Now, by default, Zoom is going to have those settings turned on. It is automatically trying to improve the quality of the human voice and get rid of everything else. So when you first download and log into Zoom, we need to go into the settings and find that setting to disable those enhancements. Now, the screenshots you're going to see here are on a PC. You can do this on a cell phone. You can do this on an iPad. The buttons may look different, but the menus are the same. So pay attention to the concepts, and you'll certainly find these settings. So on the Zoom application, we're going to find the settings button, which is highlighted here in red. And we're going to go to the audio tab on the left side or wherever you'll see the audio settings. And you'll get, this is often, many of you have probably been here to test your speaker and to test your microphone. On this screen, look for the button that says Advanced. These settings are hidden in a menu down because most people are not going to want to play with them. But for piano teaching and for teaching lessons, they're absolutely critical. So let's click the Advanced button. And here are the settings you're going to want to have. You're going to want to check the box that says Show in-meeting option to enable original sound. That means that you can start, if you use Zoom to actually talk to family, you can have it do all these enhancements that actually help the voice. But when you're teaching, you can just click a button that says Turn on original audio. So make sure that this button's checked here. And then the two other options, suppress persistent background noise and suppress intermittent background noise. Those are the algorithms that are going to really damage the sound of the piano from the perspective of what your student hears. That's where it hears a note sustaining, it thinks there's an echo, and it mutes that sound. That is exactly what's happening here. So by disabling that setting, Zoom will not listen for echoes, it won't listen to the sound of the sustaining piano, and it won't mute it down. So let's take a listen to, out of the box, what Zoom is doing, and then let's listen to the settings that we just dove into, and let's compare the difference. And again, if you have headphones, this would be a time to put those on and listen to the sound of the sustaining piano. Just a quick excerpt from the beginning of Chopin's Raindrop Prelude here, and I think the difference is pretty stunning. I'll play both back to back without saying anything, and then we'll look at it. All right, we're recording on Zoom. This is with all of the audio enhancements activated. This is Zoom as it comes when you download it right out of the box. And this is Zoom with the audio enhancements disabled. This means that we're capturing the sound directly from the microphone or the line in, however you're capturing your sound. Okay, pretty striking difference. I hope that you could hear that. As soon as we hit the A flat there, the downbeat of bar 1 after the pickup, da da da, on the first video, immediately Zoom tried to mute that A flat. It heard it sustaining for the 3 beats and it just immediately dropped. How many of you have experienced that in lessons where the sound just dies during the big chord moments of of your students performing, and we're saying, well, why can't I hear what they're playing? By disabling it, hopefully you heard the difference in the second video. The note continued to be heard throughout it. You could hear, hey, did the student play that with the right tone color? Did they hold the key for long enough? So we're not fighting those issues. I would say number one improvement that we can make immediately is to go into Zoom and disable all of those enhancements, and it becomes a very viable platform. There's still, the sound is being digitized, and there's still going to be, not the same as hearing it in person, but even from a cell phone microphone, it can make tremendous differences right away. So enable an original audio and go into the advanced settings and disable all of that persistent and intermittent noise reduction. All right, that's what we can do for free, with Zoom to improve the sound immediately. Let's talk about lighting. How many of your studios look something like this? Now, this is really inviting in a home. Beautiful lamps, actually, right there on the piano. The music book is open, and it just makes me want to sit down and play. In fact, my piano at home looks pretty similar. Now, one of the interesting things is that what looks good to us in person doesn't always look good on camera. You're probably familiar with that point. So let's talk about what is actually wrong here. And we have to kind of understand a little bit about how cameras work. What I'll say is that what we see here is not going to work well. It's going to cause problems. So why is that? Because we have very dark scene, the piano, especially the lower section of the piano, and then we have very bright, hot lights. And most cameras are going to struggle to clearly see what our eyes can see. So our eyes are well developed that we can see things that are very bright and very dark right next to each other. And for the most part, we can distinguish between them. Most cameras, especially most cheaper webcams built in, or the cheap webcams maybe that come with it, and even cell phone cameras, don't do such a good job at looking at very bright, very dark in the same picture and being able to distinguish that. So we've probably all experienced where, oh gosh, that video is just so dark, or it's all whited out, I can't see it. So think of this in musically. Think of cameras have actually a musical term. They have what's called a dynamic range. So here's a spectrum from completely black to completely white. Imagine this as a volume, a dynamic level in music, from as soft as we can play to as loud as we can play. And imagine a beginning student or an entry-level camera, cheap webcam, and a beginning level student. These, the cheaper cameras, what a camera does is it tries to divide this into number of layers. It can't really see a seamless transition. And so it can only see a finite number of colors. Now, this is black and white, but imagine black and white and dark red to super bright red, and every color has this spectrum. And so your camera is looking at all of these colors all at once. And a cheap camera is going to have fewer of these red lines. And so the difference between being able to distinguish very black and very white is going to get blurred together. And so we're going to lose the ability. Think about the piano keyboard in this type of situation, which has black and white keys. All of a sudden, all of that's going to blur together, and it's either going to be too dark to see the white keys, or the white keys are going to be all whited out and you're not going to be able to see your students' hands on them. I know I've experienced that just in calls with families and teachers when we've been video conferencing here, and we've had these visibility problems. So a cheap camera is going to really struggle. So I want to show you the difference here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. And let's take a look at what you see here. Beautiful, right? Okay, so actually I'm using an external camera and I'm pretty pleased with what I see right now because I have my computer monitors on intentionally. Now, yeah, they look a little blue, but notice how they're not affecting what the camera is seeing here. This is a little bit better external camera, and it's got accurate skin tones, and the shirt, that color that I'm wearing, I'm actually wearing a blue shirt. You can see the white paper behind me and a yellow button. So this camera does a pretty good job. This is an external camera that I bought for about $150 that I can connect right to my computer. Let me switch over to the built-in laptop webcam. And I know that a lot of teachers are using built-in cameras. This could be a phone camera. Let's see how this looks like here. All right, here we are on our webcam. Not quite so stunning, not quite so pretty, is it? It's got the blue of my shirt, but the resolution is low. My face is dark. And now imagine if I were to turn this over toward my computer, it's much more difficult to see what's going on there, and it's making me darker. So that's not an attractive look. It's going to be difficult for students to, let's switch back here to the better camera. It's going to be difficult for students to really see what's happening if we don't have a good quality camera. So immediately, what a striking difference between the built-in camera here on the laptop and the camera here that I'm looking at now. So we're going to take a look at some options. We want to make it as simple as possible, but if you can invest in some better equipment and understanding how the cameras work, we can get better results out of that built-in camera. Let's go back to sharing our screen. All right, so here we are back in our presentation. So there are things that we can do to improve even a camera that doesn't give us great results right away. Again, built-in cheaper cameras typically have limited dynamic range. So one solution that you can do is simply raise the overall lighting. In fact, I'll go out on a limb here and say, do not use regular light bulbs to try to make your space brighter for your online lessons. It's counterintuitive. It may seem like the right thing to do, but it's going to make it harder potentially for students to see you. We don't want the piano keys in your hands to be all whited out. So what's something we can do? We can change the setup potentially. Now you may not be able to move your piano, but if you can move your camera, whether it's your tablet and your device, your phone, your laptop, your computer, whatever it is, if you can position that in a way that the light helps you versus works against you, that can make it much better. We want to put, if we always can, we want to put the light behind the camera. You may have to think about that for a second, but I'm going to show you an example. If you can face the light when you talk to students, you're going to get generally a better response, even out of a cheap camera. Let's take a look at a studio. Now here's a teacher. Take a look at her piano. She's teaching on an upright. And take a look at the window there on the left side of the screen. And then you can see she has the laptop, or excuse me, her iPad between the camera and the piano. So that means that when she sits on the bench and turns left to look at the iPad to see her student play and to talk to the student, there's a nice big wide window that's shining in, illuminating. You can even see the light shining in on the piano where the piano gets wider. That's what we would call nice natural light. If you have the ability to have a window open or big lights, the bigger the light source, the more soft and flat light. Take a look in here. I don't see a lamp at all, but there's plenty of light for teaching music, for writing, or teaching piano, writing and music, seeing the student. This is going to give really good results. So I think this is a great example of, she's using an iPad. It's got an okay camera. It's front-facing camera so that she can see the student. So it's not the best camera on the device. But because of the light, most cameras want as much light as possible. So the brighter you can make your space with natural light, the better the result you'll get will be. Those are things you can do hopefully for free. They don't cost you anything other than a little bit of time and learning on the software and maybe some physical movement of some things. Let's take a look at going to the next level. Let's take a look at some better equipment that can help us achieve better results. So let's talk about microphones. I mentioned earlier that I'm actually wearing a microphone. This is great for this type of venue where I'm talking and you need to be able to hear my voice clearly. This would not be the best option for teaching piano because the microphone is close to me. It's not aimed at the piano. It's not going to be very close to the piano. So again, understanding how microphones work is important because you can buy an expensive microphone and get terrible results. You can buy a cheaper microphone and get pretty good results actually if you know how to use it. So microphones work best when they are close to the sound source. So for the human voice, the ability to wear a microphone is going to generally improve the sound quality tremendously. That's one of the reasons most laptop and phone microphones and tablet microphones aren't very good for piano sound. They're also not very good for piano sound just because the range of frequencies. Those types of devices, the microphones are designed to generally to highlight the human voice frequencies. The other reason they don't work so well is that, here's where we get technical. Microphones have what's called a pickup pattern. Imagine fishing and having a net and casting the net. It's only going to catch the fish that the net falls on top of. And any fish that are outside of that net, it's not going to do a good job of catching those fish. You can imagine that type of net as what being defined as the pickup pattern. Here's a picture of a microphone here and kind of on top of a net. That net is the pickup pattern. And take a look at the blue line. This microphones are actually designed to pick up sounds directly, usually, depending on the type of microphone. Most are designed to pick up sounds directly in front of them. That's actually called a cardioid polar pattern. And what that means is that it's going to not catch the sounds and pick up the sounds behind them, underneath the microphone. So if you've ever been in church or held a microphone and heard feedback, it's because the microphone was pointed toward the speaker. When you turn the microphone away, most of the feedback goes away. That's because of how this works. So when the microphone is aimed at our voice, it's going to do a good job of picking up the voice, but not the things that are happening over there. So we have to find this balancing act or have multiple microphones, and there are trade-offs and pros and cons of both. But we can get some types of microphones that are designed to capture a wider type of sound. So we also need to understand, as you're doing your research on what microphone, there are different types of microphones. Here's some terms you're going to come across: condenser microphones or dynamic microphones. Don't worry about getting too deep into that. Condenser microphones generally are the ones that are the most sensitive. They can be really good options for pianos. You'll see two types. One is just a USB microphone that plugs into your computer. That can be a really good option. Or XLR condenser microphones. Those are the ones that are designed to plug into some sort of mixer or interface. There is a good setup that can use something like that. A dynamic microphone is kind of the most traditional style. They can work well for pianos as well, but you'll generally need an interface. We'll take a look at that setup in a moment. If you're using a mobile device, there are microphone options for smartphones and tablets. The other thing I would recommend would be to get a designated holder for the tablet so you can position it where you want it so that you can see the student and they can see you. If you're still just balancing the phone or the iPad on the side of the piano, let's invest in a holder for it that allows us to position it wherever we want. Here are a couple really good microphones though, whether you're using iOS or an Android. Now you need to do the research as far as what type of connection your device has, but the Shure MV88 plugs into the lightning port of your iPad or your tablet. And Rode, which is an Australian company, makes really good recording equipment. They have a very small portable device called the Video Mic Me. It's designed for smartphones and tablets. And you can see both of these microphones can be pointed directly at the sound. You can point it at you and the piano, and it'll do a pretty good job of picking up both. And you can just talk in a normal tone of voice, and those microphones are aimed at you and going to do a much better job than just the built-in device if you're on a smartphone. Now, if you're on a computer, here's where we can use those USB microphones. There's a couple. A great company I love is Blue. They make some very affordable, when I say affordable, anywhere from $50 to $150 microphones. They have a little snowball. It's kind of cute. It's a round microphone. It can be just placed on a surface, a table in front of your piano, and give you great sound. The Blue Yeti is going to do even a better job of that. And lots of folks are using this to teach online with and getting great results. The nice thing is it plugs directly into your computer with a USB cable, and you can just simply select that microphone in Zoom, and all the work is done. No setup, everything just installs automatically. You can plug a pair of headphones into the bottom of the microphone, and then you can hear your own voice, your piano, and your students talking to you and playing, so that you can hear and have a great two-way interaction. Samsung Go mics are very affordable. It's about $60. Microphone clips on the laptop screen, really anywhere, and it can also give you good sound. These plug directly in, again, via USB. My recommendation is if you invest in one piece of equipment and you're using a device like a laptop or a PC, go ahead and invest in a USB microphone. And there are lots of other brands out there that will do just as well as these. So do your research, decide which one's right for you. We've already talked a little bit about cameras. The Logitech C920 webcam is a very popular one right now. It runs around $100 on Amazon, but it's a great webcam. An even better option is a GoPro, one of the newer GoPros, a Hero 8, can actually just be connected with USB cable to your camera. These GoPros, if you're not familiar with them, or a lot of times you'll see videos of people on surfboards, and going through the wave, and or jumping out of airplanes. These are the cameras that you tend to think about, action cameras for high intensity sports, but they actually work great for video calls because the color is fabulous and the dynamic range is really, really good too. So it's very wide. So it can do a good job of distinguishing between blacks and whites, and you'll get a good, clear image of your piano, especially if you don't have an ideal setup or space. So if you don't have a beautiful window you can open, if you can't really move things around, going to a better camera can give you slightly better results. It may not do everything, but if you've tried all those other things first and still not satisfied, I would suggest take a look at one of these cameras. Now, we already did this. We already took a look at the two different cameras. So you saw the differences between like a built-in camera and something, like an external camera that I'm using here. Now, let's take a look as we come in for a landing. Two simple goals if you're teaching with, or setups if you're teaching with a Mac or a PC. Setup number one is designed to be minimal cost and really get you up with superior sound, superior video than what you've had. All we're doing is we're taking a GoPro, plugging it in via USB. We're taking this Blue Yeti microphone or any other USB condenser microphone, plug it in, face everything towards the piano, and you're good to go. These will integrate and be recognized by your computer. You don't have any setup, any settings, nothing to install. They'll just work if you have a recently modern computer, and you can do this very simply, very affordably. Setup number two is going to be a little bit more intense. Now, who would this be a good setup for? This would be good for somebody who is maybe doing some recording from time to time. So if you record demonstrations for your students, this would be a setup that might give you, a really superior finished product. This is going to give you better video quality, better sound quality packaged together. I will say this is going to be the more expensive option. It's also going to be a little bit more cumbersome as far as the equipment you need. So we're going to use traditional dynamic microphones here, and you'll need an audio interface. Now, what is an audio interface? That's simply a box that's designed to take a standard microphone that you could plug into a soundboard with a 3-pin XLR cable, and it has a USB output that connects to the computer. So it acts as an intermediary to convert the signal to one that the computer can read and also provide the input type. So here's an option right now, recommending an audio interface, that GoPro camera, and then something like the Shure SM58s, and there are cheaper options out there that'll work great as well. And you can get bundles with the stand and the cable and the clip and the microphone all together and get two of them, one for the piano and one for your voice. And that can be really nice because you can get right up on top of the microphone and student can hear you beautifully. Maybe you even sing and you're recording, something like that. And the other microphone gets pointed at the piano. So pretty simple. You can see here, set up one microphone on a stand for your voice, and then aim the other microphone at the piano. Both microphones get plugged into the audio interface. A USB cable runs from the audio interface to the computer, and you have your camera plugged in, and that's all there is to it. The beauty of a setup like this is that it's going to be something that can really take your lessons to the next level. It's easy, it's affordable, and you can't plug anything in incorrectly because all the cables only go one direction. What will that cost? Well, most audio interfaces will cost around $100. Microphones, depending on the microphone you select, you can spend $25 to $150. You could spend more, you don't need to. And a better camera, there are webcams that'll work, or you can buy the GoPro. It ranges between $300 and $400. And that'll give you a setup that will be suitable for decades of online teaching. That's a lot of information. I certainly understand. I'd encourage you to reach back and watch the recording again when it's posted, and reach out and let us know, hey, I'm trying this. Can we test this out? Let us know what we can do to help. As I said at the beginning, all of this time and work on your part is helping your students see and hear you better. But what about from their perspective so that you can see and hear them better? A lot of the principles we've talked about today apply to them. Unfortunately, and fortunately. Unfortunately means that they're going to be limited by the space, but it does mean that there's some things they can do immediately to improve what your ability to see and hear them. And if you can make some recommendations for them as far as equipment to invest in, then it's a two-way improvement and everybody's going to grow more. So as I said, start with the same principles that we started with that are free. Teach them the audio adjustments in Zoom. Teach them the setup. Make sure that if they have a window, that it's open and that they turn their device and that they are looking at the light when they're talking to you, and that there's nice natural light on their piano. And I would recommend keep the microphone situation simpler for them. If you decide to go deeper, this setup will work very well for you and for them also. Something like if they're using a computer, the blue snowball, and plug it into a USB, and that's all they'll need to do. Or they can, if they're using a smart device, a mobile-friendly microphone. So really, there can be some investment. There are improvements that we can make without spending a dime. And I believe that we can elevate the experience that students get in their online lessons with some pretty easy changes that don't take long to make. So I wish you the best of luck at it. I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. This has been Key Concepts, Conversations for Piano Teachers. We've been taking a look at overcoming some of the common audio and video challenges. Let us know what you think. Let us know the questions you have, and reach out. And thank you very much for your time.